Good evening, friends, and welcome back to the Unseen Winter. Do you hear what I hear in the quiet of winter? Tonight, Chapter 4, The Girl Who Could Hear December Breathing.
Lena Marin had always been a quiet child, but it wasn't because she didn't know what to say. She simply preferred listening. Most people listen to noise. Lena listened to meaning. She heard stories in the hush of snowfall, laughter in the drip of melting icicles, warning signs in chimney smoke. She could tell when December was going to be gentle or sharp, just by the tone of the wind brushing the shingles of her house. Her gift wasn't mystical to her. It was as natural as hearing her own breath. But on the first Sunday of December, well before the town had noticed anything unusual, Lena woke before dawn to a sound that made her sit upright in bed. December was choking. The breath she felt every morning, that soft inhale of winter settling in, was wrong. Ragged, interrupted, as if the season itself were caught under a heavy hand. She pressed her palms against her ears, but the sound wasn't external. It vibrated through the very center of her ribs. That isn't supposed to happen.
She dressed quickly, pulling on boots still stiff from last night's cold, and slipped outside before her parents stirred. Frost glazed the grass, but the air carried a strange warmth beneath it, like a fever under skin. The listening trees behind her house stood unusually still, their branches angled eastward in a way that felt expectant, almost alert. They weren't whispering, they were waiting. Lena followed the direction they leaned, letting the strange, broken breath of December tug at her like a loose thread drawing her through the woods.
The forest deepened around her. Snow thinned, cold faltered, and in a clearing she'd passed 100 times in summer, but never noticed in winter, she felt the world dip, as if the ground itself held its breath in a tense, trembling moment of silence. She knelt, brushing aside brittle leaves. Beneath them she found roots, but not roots the way a child would recognize them. These were black, veined like metal, pulsing faintly, like the slow beat of a heart trying and failing to keep rhythm. With every uneven pulse, she heard the same fragile rasp she'd felt that morning. December was trapped. What's happening to you?
A gust of warm air passed through the clearing. It was wrong for winter, wrong for this moment. And she stumbled back in alarm. But she knew someone who might understand, someone older with eyes that saw past the edges of normal things, someone whose attic kept humming in sympathy with her own strange senses. Mrs. Calder. Nina Calder's aunt had been gone for years, but the Calder house still lived in local stories. Lena didn't know Nina personally, but she knew what it meant when the house hummed at midnight. Some houses listened, some remembered, and some understood things before people did.
When Nina opened the door, Lena stood on the porch with her boots muddy with thawed earth and her breath coming too fast. Nina blinked, surprised, but not dismissive. I need help. I think something's wrong with winter.
Come in.
Inside the Calder house, Lena immediately felt it. The faint vibration in the walls, softer than it had been during the blizzard, but unmistakably alive. Nina felt it too.
Lena told her everything, the roots, the uneven breathing of the season, the sense that something was squeezing winter in a way that wasn't natural. Nina listened with a familiarity Lena felt immediately. Not skepticism, more like recognition. When Lena finished, Nina didn't laugh or second guess. She simply nodded. walked to a shelf and pulled down one of Aunt Lila's journals, the same one she'd found in the attic the night the house hummed loud enough to rattle the rafters. She flipped to a page she hadn't understood the first time she read it, a page titled The Grounding Rite.
Nina read aloud, slowly, carefully, words written decades before either of them were born.
Winter is not held in the sky. It is held in the ground, anchored by those who still remember the old ways. When the anchor weakens, winter falters. When memory thins, the season gasps. When the roots fail, the thin places begin to wander.
Lena felt a chill run through her, not from the cold, but from truth fitting into a shape she didn't know she'd been carrying. The clearing's roots weren't dying, they were suffocating. The grounding ritual, the one her ancestors had once tended, hadn't been performed in generations, and Winter had been holding on by muscle memory alone. Until now.
Then the thin place is failing.
It's trying to breathe.
Nina didn't question Lena's certainty. She'd learned recently not to ignore intuition, especially when winter itself seemed to be following its own strange logic across the valley. She grabbed her coat, scribbled a note to leave on her counter, and together they headed back toward the woods. The house hummed behind them in what felt almost like an anxious farewell.
The clearing greeted them with that same unnatural warmth, not comforting, but disorienting, like stepping into a memory while still awake. Nina crouched beside Lena, tracing her fingers along the black metallic veins.
The roots pulsed harder now, as if responding to Lena's return. The air shimmered faintly above them, bending light in gentle ripples.
It's listening to you.
It's asking.
Lena didn't know how she knew. She just did. Somewhere beyond the reach of ordinary senses, she heard a whisper, not in words, but in meaning. Come in. Come help me breathe. The pulse deepened. The ground beneath her palms softened, not in the way dirt gives way to roots, but in the way doors yield to turning keys. Nina's breath caught.
Lena, what's happening?
It's opening. The earth parted in a gentle, almost respectful motion, revealing a hollow space beneath the surface. Not dark, not entirely. Pale light pulsed from within, casting long, delicate shadows of the roots along the snowy ground. Lena felt no fear, only the heavy, aching certainty that if she didn't go inside, winter wouldn't survive the season. Nina reached for her sleeve.
You don't have to do this alone.
I'm not. You found me. The house, it hummed because I remembered something important. I think winter does that too.
Lena stepped down into the hollow, the earth closing gently around the entrance behind her, like the exhale of a lung finally allowed to release its tension. Inside the space glowed with a dim, icy luminescence. There was no ceiling, no floor, just layers of intertwining root-like structures stretching in all directions, pulsing with colorless, failing light. It wasn't a cavern, and it wasn't a tunnel. It was like a rib cage. Like winter's rib cage. A season's skeleton had been exposed.
Each pulse echoed in her bones. She could feel December's voice threading around her, like frost weaving patterns across glass. The rasp was louder here, strained, pained, as if winter's breath had been caught in something sharp. Lena pressed her hand to her chest, breath aligning with the rhythm of the roots around her. She whispered, not sure to whom or what, I'm listening. The light brightened, slightly, but enough. A response. The voice of winter entered her thoughts in a soundless whisper. You hear everything except yourself. She flinched, because it was true. She'd spent her whole life listening to wind, to people, to the subtle shifts the world made when it was happy or hurting. But she'd never learned to hear herself.
Lena closed her eyes, letting the root's rhythm move through her until it steadied her breathing. She spoke, voice fragile at first.
I matter. The roots brightened. My voice matters. The rasp softened. I deserve to be heard, even by myself. The roots flared with sudden brilliance, sharp, cold light that filled the hollow without burning. Above ground, Nina staggered as frost crackled across the clearing in a sweeping ripple. The warmth vanished instantly, replaced by a crisp, clean cold that tasted like the first breath of true December. The earth didn't shake. It didn't split or roar. It breathed. Fully, freely, and Lena found herself standing back in the clearing, snowflakes drifting around her as if greeting her return. Her cheeks were wet and her chest felt lighter than it ever had. Not empty, but spacious. She exhaled, and winter exhaled with her.
Nina approached slowly, awe softening her features. You did it! Winter's here!
No, it always was here. It just needed someone to listen. But as they turned to leave the clearing, the air around the trees shifted. A figure stood at the edge of the woods, barefoot, thin, outlined in faint luminescence, as if dusted with memory instead of snow. Not threatening, not shy, just simply present, watching. The same figure who had called Mara to the creek, the same who had lingered at Nina's woods, the same who watched Rowan survive her loop. His eyes held understanding far older than his face. Lena reached out without thinking, not to touch him, but in recognition. He tilted his head, as though acknowledging a connection newly forged, and then he faded. Softly, gently, as if returning to a place just beneath the fabric of the world, where winter keeps its memories.
Lena and Nina walked together toward town, frost settling behind them in patterns too beautiful to be accidental. The valley was changing. Winter was healing. But healing seasons always reveal deeper fractures. And somewhere beyond the tree line, felt but unseen, something older stirred in the quiet between snowflakes. Not winter, not a memory, but something preparing to return. Join us next time for the final chapter of The Unseen Winter. Do you hear what I hear in the quiet of winter? Chapter 5, The Angel Who Forgot His Own Name.